With the killing of George Floyd here in Minneapolis in our neighborhood, the reaction is massive and comprehensive, and the diversity of the people in the street, it is really amazing. I think this is the first time that you can see more people from all walks of life, old, white, blacks, Latinos, all kind of crowds. So it's a very massive protest, not only in Minnesota or United States, but also across Europe. And in each country, it takes a different flavor, different take. You know, left in Germany, working in a minority in France, and yellow vest. And in England, it's a little bit confusing, and I don't know much. The last things I saw is people actually demonstrating against Black Life Matter, and Johnson came up with a statement said there is no racist thuggery in the street. I don't know what that means. What he meant, the police or the people or other people. But we have here somebody over there across Atlantic, and he is watching this event, and he's going to give us some insight on what is going on in UK. And we have here Denis Campbell. He's an author and a journalist, and wrote books. And I think we first met during the Egyptian Revolution, Tahrir Square. You wrote a book, Egypt Unraveled. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. You know, you've been such a good friend and such a positive voice for cooperation and having people work together. It's been an honor to be with you every time I've been on the show.
No, thank you. I really appreciate that. Tell us about the mood there. I think let's start with that. Tell us, UK shared a lot of racist history with the United States. What's happening now in England that is a little bit different than the rest of Europe?
Well, we've been in a situation now for quite some time where people in the United Kingdom, which is England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, those four nations come together as one, have always had a sort of a hands-off reputation with their slave trading past. And if you think about the way people of color first arrived in this country, in great numbers, it was during what we call the Windrush era, when literally thousands upon thousands of British territory islanders came to the United Kingdom in the 50s and 60s to do a lot of the jobs that many here in Britain would not do. So it was just like the Mexican gardeners and fruit pickers that you have in the United States, only here they would drive our buses, they would take care of cleaning and maid and butler services and things of that sort. And there was an issue probably about 5 years ago now where a number of them under Theresa May's government were told they could no longer, after this being their only home, because most of them were second generation, going to be allowed to stay. They were going to be rounded up, and because they didn't have the proper papers, sent back to the birth country of their ancestors. And that was the first tempest in a teapot here in the UK. When the George Floyd incident occurred, all of a sudden, a lot of pent-up anger and rage about the way in which people of color, who are still a vast minority here, are treated, came to the surface. And what was interesting was that we had a lot of people that came out in force marching for, of all things, Black Lives Matter here in this country, were mostly white, mostly young, and mostly fed up with the lack of economic opportunity under the conservative or your Republican government here in the UK. So we suddenly had, for probably 2 weekends in a row now, very large demonstrations in most of our major cities. Now, I live in Wales, which is on the far western part of the country. And what we saw in Cardiff, which is our capital city, were hundreds of people that gathered and social distanced very nicely around Cardiff Castle, which is sort of the center of this major city. And they all held placards and signs chanting Black Lives Matter. And it filled me with a mixture of pride and incredulity because I couldn't believe that, I mean, I had a friend who was saying, yeah, I'm about to go on a march in Newport for Black Lives Matter. And, this was a very white woman who had just sort of decided enough was enough, and she was going to be part of the march itself. And that's been the case here throughout, and they've been mostly peaceful, very, very large numbers, just as you've seen. But we also have a group of people in this country that never miss an opportunity to come out of the woodwork and kind of muck things up. And these are the members of the English Defence League, which is a far-right, very racist group of mostly men, a lot of skinheads, a lot of neo-Nazis that believe that, only white people should be in Britain and they should be the only ones that rule anything. And there's this wonderful photo that made it onto Twitter of a man who has wet himself in lime green shorts, another man holding a purple dildo sex toy, and others just looking generally inebriated, and they couldn't spell make Britain first correctly. Instead of being AIN, they said IAN. So this was this ragtag group, but the problem was the government put a curfew of 5 p.m. in for all marches. They had to be done by then, and most of the Black Lives Matter people respected that, and off they went. So all that were left were these right-wing thugs who were intent upon confrontation with the police, confrontation outside of the Houses of Parliament, and it got all rather ugly very quickly.
When people, I've seen a lot of signs, Black Lives Matter sign, and also chanting Black Lives Matter. Are they talking about blacks in Britain or blacks in general, or they are supporting the movement here?
Asks me an or question, the answer is always yes, because there's a little bit of both involved here. You do have, none of this would have happened as rapidly as it did were it not for the spark that lit the flame. And there's also a lot of people that have seen decade upon decade of grievance and persecution of people of color. I mean, the United Kingdom is not the most open of countries. I'm here because of a marriage to a European Economic Community member, and when we were in the European Union, that made my getting a visa as well as then a British passport much easier. And for most people, it's as much of a struggle as it is in the United States now, if not more in some cases. Refugees are treated terribly. Because we're an island, we're able to exclude people of color, whether they be brown-skinned, black-skinned, yellow-skinned, whatever. And the government under that Theresa May and now Boris Johnson has always been very anti-immigrant. And as a result, this is now strawberry and blueberry season. Crops are rotting in the field because they won't let Eastern European people come in who were the normal pickers of those crops. So we have a lot of the same problems as you have there with immigration policies.
England has a chance with a progressive Labour prime minister, and same here. We had a chance with Obama, or Sanders has also, his stars and name was coming and was giving hope to a lot of people on the left and progressive that really were about to see a major change. And then we have now Trump here, and then you have Johnson there. So is this the last card of the conservative? They are playing now, they feel they are gasping, and now they're going full Monty about it, and you have a racist white nationalist in the White House, and now you have Johnson that's also not helping the case and involving those right-wing skinhead there. So what's the dynamic there between the two forces, the people who are asking for change and progressive change, and those who wants to make British great again and racist and white, same as Americans here?
Yeah, we had a flash election, a snap election, excuse me, in December. And it was a disaster for the Jeremy Corbyn-led Labour Party. The Tories ended up with an 82-seat majority in a 650-seat parliament, which is, frankly, I mean, it's like a supermajority that you see in some states in the United States. The Tories right now can do anything they want to, and they're basically dismantling for profit the National Health Service, which is a gem worldwide. I mean, it really takes care of people. And they're privatizing and selling off and lining their own pockets as much as they can. And because of COVID-19 or coronavirus and other things going on, nobody's watching them. We're now in danger of a no-deal Brexit, which will throw everything at the end of the year completely up into the air. The Welsh First Minister and the Scottish First Minister, Mark Drakeford and I can't remember her name now, the Scottish First Minister, have both come out and said we need to delay Brexit because of the impact of COVID and all of the research that's going on between multiple governments. And, you know, this Novartis promise and pledge to provide the vaccine coming out of the University of Oxford, if it's proved to be as effective as the early trials were. And you've got all these issues, trade, customs, commerce, that are just on a collision course with the December increase in the number of COVID cases, and nobody is able to stop Boris Johnson, his cabinet, or any of these other people from doing whatever they damn well want to do. And it's just very frustrating to watch. Keir Starmer is now the leader of the Labour Party. He's cut more in the Tony Blair mode, doesn't seem to be quite as craven, but, you know, at least there appears to be a challenge growing to Boris Johnson. But unless there's an election, you know, and there's no reason for him to hold one for another 4 years, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where it's just going to continue to get worse until it has to absolutely crash before it gets better.
And a political process and politician, and that voting is not going to do it anymore. You have to be in the street. And it seems like, you know, politicians are responding to that, and people on the government level and the mayoral level and all of that responding to that pressure from the street. It seems like the only way to change is protest and going out to the street. You got that feeling over there?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's not so much here an issue. They're used to having protests, and then, you know, everybody goes home and they continue to do what they want to do. But what I've seen happen with all of the demonstrations going on in the States right now is a sea change. Things I never thought would happen are beginning to happen there. And, you know, I'm very much a fan of the presidential election process, and been a member of the White House Correspondents Association for a number of years, although I've not gone into that building since Trump entered it and defaced it. And I find, though, that the tenor has changed. And I can look back to Monday, the 1st of June, when basically he had police authorities take Lafayette Park. Now, if you've never been to Washington, D.C. and spent time in Lafayette Park, it's a wonderful park. And it's filled with some of the most well-mannered and lovely protesters you would ever come in contact with. I mean, they are all very smart. Their signs are very witty. Their causes are very just. And it's more of, it's sort of like the land that Woodstock forgot. You know, it really takes you back 50 years to that sort of hippie lifestyle. And it's fabulous to, you know, go and work in the White House press room or wherever for the day, and then to come out and, you know, have a chat with people on the sidewalk with their signs. I remember seeing groups from Falun Gong, you know, when there was oppression upon them in China. And there's often a lot of Muslim groups there that are protesting for one right or another. And to see that park besieged by police of all different stripes, many without badges, many without names, and set upon with tear gas, CS gas canisters, police on horseback, batons, pepper spray, just beating people back left and right. And a lot of these police in many of these cities are adopting Mubarak's secret police tactics from 2011. Yeah, I remember, you know, we would see people being shot through one eye to send a message. And what are these police doing with these rubber bullets? They're blinding people by shooting one eye. And it just was like, oh my God, this is the dictator's handbook that is literally being applied on United States citizens. So, you know, that though was a sea change, because these were peaceful protesters, and no matter how the government tried to spin it, and then you had that stupid photo op by him in front of the church, where the minister of that church had to flee the tear gas. He was sitting out on the patio that was being fired around and couldn't get near his own church when Trump was there. It was truly astounding. And people saw it for the BS that it was. And his polls since the first, we're now 15 days later, have cratered everywhere. And it's like the huckster show that he thrives on, and the disruption and all of the lies and the made for TV moments, none of them are working right now. And that's the best news to come out of all of this, because they see the emperor has no clothes, and they're very, very awake now to what it's been like. And, you know, to see all these white people who would say things like, well, all lives matter, or blue lives matter, and all of that horse, you know what? It's like, okay, wait a minute. People are suddenly awakening. I think the term now is woke. And you've got people that you would have never seen before in a protest or a march, now protesting and marching.
Now with globalization and people watching each other, and you can see the resemblance between what's happening in Europe to what's happening here. And also, as you mentioned, that there is also resemblance when you see the sign and people festival things in square and street, also resemblance of Arab Spring and Tahrir Square village.
Well, also, you know, we're taping today on Monday, and it's Monday morning your time, Monday afternoon my time. And the Supreme Court just came out with its landmark 6-3 decision regarding the rights of LGBT people. And you know, to see a 6-3 decision, you don't see those. They're almost always 5-4. But Chief Justice Roberts and Gorsuch, Trump's appointees, said, no, wait, these people qualify for the protections under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I never would have thought that possible before all that has been happening over the last few weeks, to see people really beginning to take a look at situations and saying, you know what, that's just not right. We need to do this differently.
And that note, Denis, I would like to bring, I know you mentioned, the Supreme Court landmark decision about the LGBT. I don't know if you heard that yesterday, Egyptian LGBT activist Sarah Higazi committed suicide in Canada after she left persecution in Egypt. And it was a horrible, horrible story. The torture and imprisonment in El-Sisi's, Sisi used this moral oppression to get rid of the people on the left. And she left a suicidal note. It's just heartbreaking that she said, "Oh humanity, you've been You were very harsh on me, but I forgive.
Yeah.
What a wonderful story. Sarah Higazi, rest in peace. And thank you so much, Dennis. Enjoy the rest of the day. And this is not going to end soon. And I think we got them what we wanted, and we need to keep the pressure, and we need to share this suffering and the grief of George Floyd with everybody around the world. It's like
situation last Saturday or the Saturday before, I can't remember now, I get confused, the Saturday before last, where the statue of Colston, who was a huge slave trader, was toppled and thrown into the Bristol Harbor. And, you know, a number of people did that. And to see, again, mostly white people do that to the statue of a slave trader. And yesterday I saw that there's this big music hall in the center of Bristol. It's called Colston Hall. They were taking down his name. It's going to be renamed something else. So people are looking at these symbols and doing what they need to do.